Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Cecilyn gave me the green light to go ahead at 12:30, so I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, first off, I don't know if she can hear me. I want to thank Cecilyn for organizing this event and also handling all the logistics. And of course, thank you to you students for coming here today. I realized this was an opt-in event, and you guys chose to be here, so I promise I'll do my best to share something of value with you here this afternoon. All right? My name is Julian Placino, and for the past 10 years, I've been working in the field of professional recruitment and staffing. And over the course of my career, I've had the wonderful privilege of having successfully helped advance the careers of hundreds of individuals in a multitude of different disciplines all over the country. And having this experience has given me some clear insight into what it actually takes to land a job. And the title of my training today is 3 Keys to Supercharge Your Job Search. So in essence, what I've done, in 10 years of experience, I've dialed them down to the top 3 most important things that I know absolutely move the needle when it comes to finding the job that you want. But before I jump into the technical training aspects of the conversation, I first wanted to share a little bit about my story, how I got here, and why I think it's relevant to the conversation today. So I graduated from the University of North Texas back in 2005 with a bachelor's degree in business administration. And at the time, I thought that not having a degree was the only limiting factor that would prevent me from getting my first grown-up white-collar job in corporate America. And at this particular time in my life, I was really overconfident in my ability to go get a job once I got my degree, because I'd actually built a very successful career in the retail space. I worked for the technology retailer CompUSA, and I worked for CompUSA for 6 years. I started off my career there as a repair technician fixing desktop and also laptop PCs. And I think I was okay at that, but I think leadership took notice that my particular strengths were more dealing with the customer. So they promoted me to management. And luckily for me, I was really good at management. And the stores that I operated always ran in the top 5-10% of the company in terms of profitability and also efficiency. And they would actually move me from store to perform turnaround operations for locations that were lagging behind. And the last role that I held at CompUSA was a training position, where I would share the best practices of running these tech departments with my particular region. So I was very much highly touted as this young up-and-coming guy that was going to help provide leadership to CompUSA one day. But I knew in the back of my head, as soon as I got my degree, I wanted to escape the world of retail and go work in corporate America. And you know what was silly? Was my notion of success. Because the truth is I had no clue of what I wanted to do after college. But I had this funny image in my head of wearing a suit and tie to work every day and working in a skyscraper in downtown. How superficial was I, right? But nevertheless, there I was with 6 years of technology retail experience, 3 years of management, 1 year of training, technical certifications, a bachelor's degree in business administration, and now everyone in my network telling me how great I was. All of this absolutely went to my head. So my notion of the job search was this: once I would start applying for jobs and submitting my resume to the marketplace, was that companies would just start rolling out offers to me. Ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you with certainty that did not happen in my case. But rather what ensued for the next 8 months were some of the most humbling and challenging series of events I went through early on in my career. Did I just die here?
No, you clear out.
Am I still coming up? Okay, can you guys hear me in the back? Okay, perfect, all right. So essentially what had happened is I went through this process of applying for jobs and constantly being rejected. I was rejected 35 times. Sometimes I'd apply to a job and then hear nothing back, like I submitted my resume into this black hole. Sometimes I'd apply to a job, get a call back, do a phone interview, decline notice like instantly. But most of the time, I'd be invited for these in-person conversations, doing multiple phase interviews, technicals, behaviorals, group panel discussions, feeling like I nailed every step of the process, only to be followed by, you guessed it, another decline notice. And after being told no so many times in a row, I was really beginning to lose heart and confidence in myself. And I realized there are worse things in the world that can affect the human condition outside of just not being able to get a job. But for me, that was my identity. I was a young, successful kid who was supposed to go take over the world, and here I was charging out into the marketplace, and no one wanted me. But something was happening during this process, which of course I didn't see at the time. I was learning how to shake hands. I was learning how to make eye contact. I was learning how to conduct myself in an interview. I was learning the process of how to find a job. And then finally, the one company that decided to make me an offer, which ultimately I accepted, was a company called Robert Half International. And Robert Half International is one of the most prestigious and elite staffing companies in the whole world. And I accepted the job of a sourcer, which is like a junior level recruiter. So there I was. Instead of spending every waking hour of my day trying to find a job for myself, I was beginning a career where I was still doing just that, but now in the service of others. And that's what I've done for the past 10 years. And I've helped a lot of people find opportunities in different jobs all over the country. So I shared this story with you for a couple of reasons. Number one, I find a tremendous amount of meaning what I'm about to share with anyone who is looking for this kind of information. But number two, I have no idea what your situation is, but I know that looking for a job is absolutely one of the most emotional things you could ever do, because it involves an element of risk, the risk of being rejected. And if you're one of those people that has some kind of anxiety about your job search, I want to let you know that there's hope. But not just like the flimsy kind of hope, but a real, systematic process that you can follow each and every time that creates predictable results. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I'm going to share with you here in the brief time that we have. Is that cool? All right. So I just mentioned that there's a systematic process. Well, the system here in this case is a circle. And the great thing about a circle is that you can repeat it over and over until you get that desired outcome. So the first step in a job search is beginning one. Then you generate leads. You apply for the job, you interview, you evaluate offers, and you accept it, right? Usually never that simple. But the most important event that can take place in anyone's job search is the interview. Notice that I'm not saying it's the offer, because X number of things can happen on the back end. The company could pull funding, an internal candidate can supersede your candidacy, whatever it is. But getting offers is a byproduct of the quality and quantity of interviews that you land for yourself. Nothing happens until a candidate communicates his or her value to the person who actually makes the decision. And the three keys we're going to be talking about is all about landing that interview. Got it? So here's the agenda, the actual three keys. The first thing we're going to talk about is your resume. What we're not going to be talking about is punctuation and grammar and formatting. We're going to talk about the real things that actually matter when a professional hiring person goes to look for a candidate. And those things are searchability, readability, and the relevance of your resume to the business need. Number two, we're going to talk about leads and a couple different ways that you can get it. Quite frankly, if you don't have leads, you don't have a job search. The more leads you have, the more opportunities you can choose from choices. And we're going to talk about a couple ways that you can generate a perpetual list of job leads. And lastly, follow-up. If there's one thing that you guys get from today's conversation, let this be it. You could forget everything else that I tell you, but this is truly the silver bullet in landing the interview, and we're going to talk about some interesting ways on how you can do that. So let's jump into it, your resume. That's kind of a funny picture, right? But there's two things I want you guys to get from that, the candidate perspective and the employer perspective. Number one, from the candidate perspective, that means you have competition, right? Which is absolutely true. Here's the truth of the market, is that every single semester, somebody graduates, and thousands of new graduates are ejected into the marketplace, semester after semester after semester. And once you graduate from college, you're now into this place called entry level. And this is the most brutal place you can be when it comes to looking for a job, right? So I want you to think about that when you're crafting your resume. Number two, this stack of resume, it represents work for a company to go through. Because the truth is, companies have to look through all of these resumes to find the right candidate. So if there's anything that you can do to make it easier for the employer to hire you, think about that as well. So number one, is it searchable? So the vast majority, when you guys look for information online, what do you do?
Go to Google.
You go to Google and then you do what?
Type in research.
You type in text, right? That's the same thing hiring managers use to find candidates, a text-based searching method, right? So the cardinal rule in terms of writing a resume from a technical perspective is what's being said and how many different ways can you say it. Because whatever job you're applying for, there's a specific language associated with it, right? So like if you're an accountant, for example, is it a CPA, a certified public accountant, accounts receivable, accounts payable, is it Great Plains software, SAP, QuickBooks, Quicken, whatever that is. Or if you're looking to be a project manager, there's different project management methodologies. Is it Agile? Is it Scrum? Is it whatever those things are, right? But be cognizant, there is a language associated with the job that you're applying for. So, I'm sorry if you guys can't see this, it's a little fuzzy in the projector, but what you're looking at is the back-end search function to LinkedIn. Who here is on LinkedIn? Awesome. That's kind of like basic 101 stuff just to at least even get in the game. But LinkedIn is basically a social network that all professionals pretty much use. It's like the Facebook for finding a job or a professional network, right? But there's things here, what I want you to see is on the left column here. There's certain fields that a professional hiring manager or recruiter uses to look for candidates. He can search by first name, last name, title, company, school, zip code, previous organization. But there's one thing I want you to focus on, and that's this one here. It says keywords. And every single high-powered recruiting tool that exists has this function. We pay $11,000 a year for one seat to have this tool here. Licenses like Monster, Career Builder, and Dice equally the same. That means it's important. Every single search function out there and any recruiting tool has this, and be cognizant of that. So for example, so I work for a company called Bottle Rocket Studios. Has anybody ever heard of us before? So we're an app developer, and we make mobile apps for very high-profile companies. We're actually the developer behind apps like Chick-fil-A, ESPN, BET, NPR, Food Network, History Channel. We've got a ton of apps out there, right? So I oversee the hiring organization for this company, and all day long we look for software engineers. But not just any software engineers, iPhone and iPad engineers. So the operating system for an iPhone is iOS. And the language that these programmers program in is called Objective-C. So if I'm looking for an iPhone programmer in the keyword section using Boolean strings, just like you guys used to look for whatever it is that you guys look for on Google, I type in iOS and Objective-C, and this is what comes up. Only candidates with iOS and Objective-C are going to come up in my search field. And then do you know what happens here? All these people, that becomes my call list. That's who I know to reach out to. Do you see where I'm getting with this? There's a certain tactical aspect of making sure the language of your resume resonates with the employer because that's what they're looking for. Does that make sense? Okay. So once you're in the game, once your resume is actually searchable, and then you're competing now equally with people who are going after the job. Now, is it readable? I know this is kind of funny. It's super fuzzy, right? It's much clearer than this in the actual presentation. But when you first take a look at this resume, to me, it looks really dense, right? It's like in paragraph form. Because everybody knows like the average time somebody spends to read a resume is like 20 to 30 seconds, right? Well, me, I hire for the same thing over and over, like 10 seconds max. And this right here creates barriers of comprehension for me because it reads like a paragraph, right? Now this is the exact same content with a bulleted format. Do you see the use of separation, white space, how more clear the ideas are when it comes to the actual resume? So is it readable? Structure your resume in a way that it's easy for the person to read. A few things that I see is do not put pictures on a resume. That's one thing I can pretty much say. You have no idea. You could be the most beautiful man or woman in the world, but you have no idea who's looking at that resume, right? You have no idea what kind of bias that person has. So I'd say stay away from putting pictures on your resume. And lots of graphics too. I don't know if there's a lot of creatives in here, but sometimes I see resumes that look like an infographic. You know what I mean? So don't do that. It's got to be text, bulleted, functional points with the keywords associated with your discipline. Make sense? Lastly, is it relevant? So you got the keywords. You structure the resume in a way that it actually does make sense. It is easier for somebody to read. Lastly, who cares? What is a job? A job is it's a solution to the need of a business, right? It's a function. So a good way to test to see if your resume is good for this particular position is look at the job description and read it. I know you guys probably can't read it, but this is actually a job description that we use for an office manager. And if you look at some of the functional bullet points, it says daily administrative tasks, general lifting, purchasing supplies, maintaining inventory, scheduling necessary maintenance. Doesn't it make sense if you're applying for this job, if you have that experience, that that's reflected in your resume? Does that make sense? What I'm not saying to do is copy that job description bullet for bullet and stick it in your resume. What I'm saying is be honest about your experience and make sure it's actually there. Make sense? All right, that's what I'm talking about resumes. So job leads. Job leads are quite literally the lifeblood to your job flow. That's fine. All right, nice. So, okay, so whenever somebody comes to me from scratch and says, okay, I need to look for a job, I always say go to your warm market first. It's people that you know, love, and trust, okay? So, we'll just hammer through these. So why the warm market? Here's one thing. I've been at Bottle Rocket Studios for 4 years now. We've quadrupled in size in that time, and we've never paid a single third-party hiring company to grow our organization. 1 out of every 2 hires was an internal referral, meaning someone who works at the company shared their information with somebody else or their network and brought them in. That's a clue, guys. Whoever it is in your networks that can get you in front of the people that you're looking to make an impression on or submit your resume, that's where you need to go, okay? So family and friends, probably not the best people to work with necessarily, but great for giving you leads, right? Your mother is always going to say, hey, you know, talk to my son, he's good for the job, right? But the warmer connection you have to the person that makes the decision, the closer you are to landing that interview. Make sense? Coworkers and bosses, great. If you have a good work ethic and people know your personal brand, that's amazing. That's an easy way to say, hey, do you know anybody who's looking for something like this? You know who I am, you trust my brand. And referrals are important because they're recommendations based on trust. So always start your search through your warm network. So cold market. So cold market is basically whenever you exhaust all your contacts in your warm market, right? So cold is where everybody else goes. And this is kind of like the low-hanging fruit that everybody should do, but focus on your warm market. Has anybody here ever used Indeed before? Awesome. So Indeed is exactly what it's advertised. One search, all jobs. So there's a multitude of different job boards out there. Monster, Career Builder, Dice. This one here is an aggregator. So if you just go to this one here and type in the search criteria for whatever job you're going to be, it's going to pull up all the actual positions that the marketplace is advertising for that particular discipline. LinkedIn, we talked about that. I would say 90% of all recruiting professionals use LinkedIn to find talent. So that, just get in the game, you know? Competition. So earlier I talked about a story how I worked for CompUSA, right? That really dates me. Does anybody know what CompUSA is? Oh my gosh, that makes me feel old. CompUSA is like a technology retailer. It was a competitor for Best Buy, Fry's, and also Circuit City. I was working at CompUSA for 6 years, right? If I ever came into the office one day and was like, dude, I cannot take this anymore. You know where I'd go probably next? Is to Best Buy. It's to Fry's. A like company. There's a good chance whatever company you're applying for that has that job, they have competition. And you know what you are to them, if you've worked there before? A source candidate. That's what recruiters call like a proven place where you can find people. Does that make sense? Competition. Interest groups like meetup.com. Has anybody here ever used the meetup.com before? Use it. It's whatever interest groups that you guys have. Like, what's in the class right now? I know there's business majors and education, right? Like, what are their majors? Health and wellness. Okay, cool. So like, for example, if you want to network with people in health and wellness, I go to meetup.com and type in your zip code. You'll see people, and the people that go to these things are usually people who are really passionate and motivated, right? So it's usually like the creme de la creme of people in that specific organization. So those are the people that you need to network with. Get out of your comfort zone and start meeting people. Job fairs. Has anybody here been to a job fair before? I mean, it's like this crazy hiring meat market, you know what I mean? It's so tough to land a job there, but it's one of those things that you can use just as another tool in your toolkit. I recommend it. You take a shotgun approach and meet as many people as you can. Get your name out in front of every person that can make a decision within your particular discipline that you're looking for. And lastly, recruiters. So I came from the agency world of recruiting. I had no clue this market actually existed. There is a multi-billion dollar industry out there of recruiters who are paid to find you jobs. Has anybody here ever leveraged a recruiter before? Kelly Services, Robert Half Technology, Kforce, any of those sound familiar? chances are whenever you start applying for jobs, you're going to be getting called from headhunters. These guys are actually incented to help you find a job. But the catch-22 about that is they're serving their client and not necessarily you. The client pays them if they find a specific match for their opening. So keep those in mind. They're helpful as well. So, sorry, I'm drying up here. I don't know what's going on. Okay, earlier I said this was a silver bullet, and I mean it. So this is what, all right, some weird stuff going on with the slide here. At least this is what I felt like when I first started applying to jobs when I graduated from school, because I had all that experience. I was a manager, people were telling me I was awesome, I got a bachelor's degree. This is how candidates perceive whenever they're applying. Look at me, I'm human. I have experience. I've got all this great stuff. Of course they're gonna hire me, right? This is quite literally what you look like whenever you apply to a job. You remember that black hole I talked about earlier? This is it. This is called an ATS, or an applicant tracking system. Whenever you submit your resume to a company, it doesn't go away. It ends up in someone's database. So there's a couple things that I want you to take away from this. This is a real posting that I created for an accounting clerk, right? So I posted this job, and in one day, I had 25 applicants. In 7 days, 11 pages came up of this. One job, 1 week, 259 applicants for one job. Is that crazy? Here's who got the job. Her name is Kathy Qualls. So of those 259 people that applied for the job, she was not one of them. Crazy, right? So how does that work? Is that even fair? So check this out. So Kathy used Indeed.com to find our opening. She just typed in accounting position, and then she researched our company, really thoroughly read the website, was appreciative of what we do, found our address, drove to the studio, and asked to speak with me because my name was on the job posting. So, and remember the other piece of that resume graphic that I showed you that it represented work? That's daunting for me. I don't want to look through 259 resumes, right? I have somebody knocking on my door right now that wants this job, and she's hungry for it. So I said, hey, what the heck, let's give it a shot. So I brought Kathy in, and within 5 minutes of interviewing her, I knew she was a fit. It turns out, Kathy was the former controller to UT Southwestern. So she was absolutely a fit for the position. Right after that, I sent her over to my boss, who's the EVP of operations. We hired her the next day. Is that fair? Yes. It is absolutely fair. She did something that everyone else was not willing to do. She made it easy on me to make the decision, and she pitched me her value. Does that make sense? Let that be, learn something from that, that it's important to take kind of unorthodox approaches to reaching out to hiring managers. So what's your sizzle? So one of the most challenging things that I get with college graduates, it's hard for them to articulate their value. And a sizzle, in essence, is like a 30-second marketing spiel about who you are. And that's not salesy, that's not cheesy, that's important. Communication is critically important to landing a job. And you have to be able to tell people, why you? So here's my sizzle, right? I'm a senior corporate recruiter with 9 years of experience. Currently, I manage recruiting for one of the world's premier mobile developers, and having saved them over $500,000 in fees in the past 3 years. Whenever you can include cost savings or efficiency of any kind of process or making something that wasn't good great, that is a great sizzle. So think about that. What are the things that you've done before? Even if it's a retail job or anything like that, how have you made something better, and how is that relevant to the company that you're applying to? A lesson from Alex Craig. So Alex Craig actually originally applied for a senior account manager at BottleRocket. Account managers are client services professionals, people that sell into our accounts and sell multi-million-dollar deals. But Alex actually graduated from college about a year ago, and the truth was he wasn't a fit. So I sent him a decline notice pretty instantly. Well, instead of just accepting that, he hit me up several times and tried to keep pitching me his value, right? He still wasn't a fit for the need of the business because the guy was just still too junior. We needed somebody senior. So check out what he did. He sent an email, and up here, it says Calvin Carter. Calvin Carter, and he didn't know the actual domain of how to email what it was. It was Calvin.Carter at BottleRocket Studios, C. Carter at BottleRocket Studios, Calvin _. He hit them all up, right? Calvin Carter is the CEO of my company. And then what did he do? He wrote this paragraph about an app that he built, and he had sold for $30,000. He was pitching his value to who? The highest that you can go. And guess what? Recruiters and HR professionals are kind of gatekeepers, and that's what I was doing to this guy. I was screening him out. But if you pitch your value to the people who can change your life, that's really important. And that's what he did here. He did the sizzle, the thing that we talked about, pitched his value to somebody who could hire him, and it was the CEO of the company. Is that cheating? No, that's smart, right? So this is kind of an interesting quote that you could use for different aspects of your life, and it's by Mark Twain. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. Nothing can be truer about the way that you find jobs. Most people will apply for a job and then just wait for a call back. That's like the beginning, right? You apply to a job, look who the hiring manager is, call in, see if you can take them out for coffee, buy them for lunch, do something crazy. I've had people drop off cookies just to come meet with me, and you know what, that works. And you know what, sometimes they're not the best candidate, but they got a meeting with me. And remember, offers are byproducts of quantity and quality of interviews that you get. Use every tool at your advantage. So in review, we talked about the important things about your resume, which is the readability, the searchability, and the relevance of it. We talked about leads, a perpetual way to find them from the warm market and also the cold market. And then lastly, the silver bullet, which is follow-up. That's the most important thing that I want you guys to get. Let me ask you this. Who here after graduation knows exactly what it is that they want to do? With certainty. That's awesome. That's really great. Who here, just be honest now, and I was that person, who here doesn't know what they want to do when they graduate? I came for you, man. And I'm kind of serious in saying that, in the sense that as a professional recruiter, I've interviewed thousands of people, right? And I was one of those guys. That's actually one of the reasons why I had such a hard time finding a job. One of the hardest people to coach is the person who doesn't know what they're going to do. When I have 259 applicants applying for one job, and I talk to one guy that says, man, I don't know what to do, honestly, I'll just do whatever you want. I can't help that person, right? So here's my advice to you. Here's advice I would give myself. As early on as you can in life, find out what you are naturally great at. Everyone here has been given specific talents that they do better than other people. Find them as soon as you can. Is it engineering? Is it communication? Is it sales? Is it sports? Is it whatever? Everyone is great at something. Number two, find out what you love to do. What are the activities that you invest yourself in where time just melts away? Where it's not a chore. You do it for free. You get excited about those things. Find a way to create an intersection between what you're naturally great at, what you love to do, and what can create an income. Because if you found that, you found more than just a job. You found a career, you found a calling. All right? Try to find that as early on as you can, wherever it is. That's it, guys. Any questions? No questions?
So how long did it take you to get your first job after you graduated?
Took me 8 months.
Oh.
Took me 8 months and 35 rejections later, yeah. Yeah, not even joking. You know what one of the things was, the pieces of criticism I got, was that I was overly rigid. I think the way that I communicate sometimes comes off as maybe a little arrogant, and I didn't know that, and nobody would tell me that. And nobody told me that until I started making friends in the professional recruiting industry, and that's important too. Get feedback about yourself. And do mock interviews too. You practice that. You know, because going into an interview is kind of an uncomfortable thing. It's sort of this weird place where you have to sort of get to know each other. Everybody's on their best behavior. The truth is, on the employer's perspective, whatever you get from that interview is a snapshot of what that candidate's actually like. If there's a way that you could pitch your references as part of your application, that's great. I would much rather have a great reference from someone than just someone who's just amazing in an interview. Thank you for the question. Yes?
The sizzle aspect, what you were talking about,
Yeah.
like what have you done or implemented, do you recommend that goes on your resume as well?
So I think it should be built into the functional bullet points of your resume. Do you remember that slide that I showed you of those bullets? It would be part of that. The sizzle would be the best of all of those bullet points that you would pitch to somebody, right? So back in 2000, okay, so I was at Robert Half for 2 years. And when your job is dependent on the local economy hiring and it's not hiring, your job goes away too. So for the first time